Welcome to this episode of Exploring the Humanities, Voices from the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. Our podcasts allow us to showcase the exciting and innovative work being done by our colleagues in the humanities, intersecting with fields as varied as aviation, mental and physical health, virtual reality, design, neuroscience. I am Reña Lopez from the Faculty of Humanities. And with us today, we are very privileged to have Dr. Wan Clara, lecturer in the Department of Language Science and Technology of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. Clara, thank you so much for being with us today. To start with, tell us a little bit more about your background.
Thanks for inviting me. So my background is actually multidisciplinary that sits at the intersections of corpus linguistics, computational linguistics, natural language processing, and importantly, I have interdisciplinary academic background training in electronics engineering. That gives me a quite good foundations of training in logical thinking and systematic viewing in certain research question.
Could you give us a broad overview of your research?
So my research actually begins with corpus linguistics, which actually aims to study language pattern via the use of corpus, that is a collection of data. Through corpus linguistic studies, via techniques such as concordancing, keywording context, and queries, this can help language users or teachers to find the prominent language patterns for this information. This provides a foundation for my current research on computational linguistics that is based on modeling of linguistic phenomenon via various kinds of computational models, where I focus more on the natural language processing component, as we know that computational linguistics is quite broad area that can cover a lot of issues and techniques. My research focuses on modeling the intrinsic and implicit language footprints in all forms in combination with the existing state-of-the-art models like embeddings, transformers, that enabling the current intelligence of large language models, as you see, you might have tried.
You mentioned that you work with corpus linguistics.
Yes.
What is that?
To make it simpler, it's actually based on collections of data in textual form most of the time, based on techniques of concordancing and to find the collocations of language patterns. It is usually used for people such as language teachers to try to find the significant collocation with a word like go viral with, in order to teach and also to showcase students how language works, like through techniques to show the information in keyword and context, to provide frequency information for the students to know the patterns of collocations.
So this is really useful for a second language learner, so someone who is trying to learn English, for example, and to work out all the possible uses that you can have of the word go, for example, as you've mentioned.
Yeah, of course. Almost everything you wanted to learn about, or if you're going to write an essay, I'm not sure how to write the words properly. And in this situation, collocation works. But this is just the earlier research of mine while I was in PhD candidature. But now my work focuses a little bit more on computational linguistics. It is actually based on corpus linguistics, while it is also multidisciplinary, incorporating and combining more techniques such as machine learning, natural language processing, and in NLP in short. So NLP actually is the core component of current language models. So you have probably tried to use ChatGPT, right? So these models are actually based on training the intelligence of machines to be able to understand language, the meaning, process the language and then generate respective responses to the inquiries of the users. So actually that summarizes the core components and techniques for enabling machines' intelligence.
So are you saying that corpus linguistics is basically the basis of all of this computational linguistics and NLP work that people are doing today, and by extension AI and the models, the language learning models?
You could say so. It's like the earlier foundations of this trajectory that are leading to the current powerful intelligence of the models, from language models to large language models to the current advances of models, transformers. They're actually dealing with a core common issue of understanding, representing language.
Thank you. I think that made it much clearer for our audience. We often get students asking, well, what exactly is corpus linguistics and how does that work with AI? So it's good to have this basic knowledge. So you've mentioned computational linguistics. Tell us a little bit more about computational linguistics. What does it actually mean? How many different subfields are there within computational linguistics, and which do you look into?
It actually passes a wide range of topics and different methodologies. Generally, it uses computational techniques trying to study language, understanding it. But this is a broad issue. My research focusing on modeling linguistic features. That's the footprints where the interfaces of language forms, like you can see the patterns from the frequency of words used. Features are the salient patterns that can tell how the language behave and to show the traits of humanistic behavior, communication patterns, even societal behavior. So in short, my research will focusing on enabling this model by incorporating implicit external knowledge on the basis of accessing to this textual data in order to enhance the model's sensitivity to not just word and meaning, on top of it, to understanding the real emotions, cognitions, implicit knowledge like figurative language metaphor and lies, sarcasm, all these interesting humanistic things into language modeling. Yeah.
So you've mentioned metaphors, you have mentioned lies, figurative language. All of those aspects are related to emotions and what is, in effect, affective computing, yes? So you're looking at the affective side of the language. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's one of the focus of my research. But if you're asking this computational linguistic research scope in a broader range, it is not limited to just affective computing. Well, it is only because it attracts me and in making me, driving me to really conducting some research, trying to find out the intrinsic mechanism in machine intelligence, in understanding language.
Do you think that's possible? Do you think that a machine can actually get to the point of understanding these nuanced meanings that we can have human to human?
It is happening. It is making a reality now. It's not easy, a challenging task that involves a lot of work, like to solve the difficult problems of context modeling. And we know language is dynamic and it's complex. So that's also part of the reason that attracts me to conduct such research. And a group of us in the community of computational linguistics have done successful work to show that it is possible.
So let's go into the ethical side of things for a minute. Do you think we want to do that? Do we want machines to behave like humans do?
That's a very important issue, actually. This is a common problem that actually everyone in the world is encountering. Machine can be incredibly intelligent and powerful given the current techniques, incredibly big data input into the model, training with highly advanced machine learning techniques, deep learning, right? And the world knowledge representation techniques with embeddings, external and cognitive data resources. People are doing all this works together. That's leading to what you're witnessing and seeing and using now the GPT models, transformers. So we can't say that this work is trivial. Yeah, it is happening and then it's advancing all the way around.
Are we worried about it?
I tend to be positive. Yeah, there are two different voices. Overall, some people concerns that AI can be too powerful, and it could be more powerful that it could teach itself, to evolve and ignore the humanistic needs. In the end, will probably goes to the opposite direction in destroying the humanity. Once it's powerful enough, like some of the scenarios you see in the fictions, right? That's possible, but as a linguist, computational linguist, in the Faculty of Humanities, I'm very confident that if we do this ethical modeling concerns with proper regulations and infuse this into the modeling of AI, it is actually essential, necessary, guiding the AI to be more humanistic kind of intelligent systems with mercy.
So you had mentioned before lies and metaphors. How does a computer being able to process lies and metaphors help it to be a better system?
I would like to say that machine is actually not able to understand that language. If you allow me to talk about more techniques, how current agent systems is able to understand a question is largely based on the representation of this natural language into vectors, embeddings. So it's basically numbers and all dimensions of numbers based on statistics to find probability of what exactly the people is saying. And that is literal, actually. It's limited access to formal representation, largely based on speech, texts, or the current multimodal representations. It is powerful already, but still it is based on the surface form of what we can input to the machine in terms of sounds and texts and images and videos.
So you're saying that every single word, every single context, every single image, every single sound is actually transformed into a number.
Yes, so that also shows this reliance on such representations in order to empower or enhance the current model's performance. So go back to your question, why I would be interested to study those less implicit information like emotion, lies, sarcasm, metaphor, right? So like metaphor is figurative. It's more pertaining to humans' cognitive thinking about language without access to any surface information. So one of my paper mentioned the sensory motor. That is based on cognitive theory and in cognitive linguistics, trying to understand language as an interface of people in their mind in connecting to the external world via interfaces of six senses, vision, audio, touch, right, sound, etc., and actions, body movement, hands, foot. Yeah. So this information actually, it is changing all the time. And it's hard to feed those information holistically to the models to make them being able to perceive the external world, the space information all the time.
Because what you're saying is that every single one of these inputs has to be transformed into a number?
The current models are based on numbers because computer only works with 0 and 1.
So then what happens if you have managed, looking at this room around us, if everything in this room has been coded and every possible action or interaction that we have with the objects and with each other in this room has been coded, is that enough then for the machine to be able to interpret more abstract meanings that perhaps a metaphor might have?
That requires our collaboration as human beings together. That's why in the humanities, Faculty of Humanities, people work in different sub-disciplines, some focusing on more neuroscience, where they rely on setting up behavioral experiments, like trying to connect it to humans' mind with access to EEG or to catch eye movement, to understand humans' behavior while they are producing certain language. That's one group of people, and our people focusing on more testing of adding different dimensions of such implicit information with the existing representations, like do a fine-tuning. What we can do is limited, but still we're on the way to find more different directions of understanding language truly, intrinsically.
So in this paper you've mentioned where you have been studying metaphors, tell us more about how did you do it and what aspects of the sensors or actions that a human can do did you take into account?
It is only one of the papers that I investigate in the previous years, as I mentioned. It's also a kind of implicit figurative language metaphor. So the idea in my paper is that I try to utilize a kind of innovative methodology to study metaphor. So as I know, most of the existing researchers, even now, are still heavily relying on manual annotation, manual analysis to study the domain mapping phenomenon, different sources, different categories of sources of the metaphors.
Tell us a little bit more about the mapping and the different sources and give us a couple of examples for our audience.
For instance, I would use examples more related to sensory because I use sensory dictions and norms. So for instance, the sweet voice, right? It's a very simple adjective and noun phrase. This sweet is used to depict the sense of taste, and voice is the noun head. That's actually referring to the sense of listening, right? So this domain transfer from using taste dimension, sensory to the audio sensory is a very good example of metaphor. Yeah, the metaphor is actually everywhere in our conversation. Even you're not an academic people, you are actually using metaphor all the time. So that's the early reason driving me to study metaphor. But then the traditional way of studying metaphor, I'm not saying they're not good, it's because I'm with more purpose on computing. So I'm trying to automatically detect metaphors in texts and then to utilize the existing data sets to train the models to trying to understand the metaphors distributions across different groups. That's the early reasons. And then when you start doing a research, there are a lot of circumstances, and it leads me to explore more possibilities with incorporation of external knowledge. So sensory motor is the one I tried in my research.
So why do we use metaphors? Why is it in specific contexts that you will see people using them more often?
Yeah, that's a very ambitious problem theoretically. I'm not a theoretical linguist, but it's interesting and thought-provoking while I'm doing this research. So I think it's natural when people say metaphorical thing. To my understanding, people trying to express information more efficiently for communication, right? For more effective communication. So using metaphorical expressions, they are able to access, like to enhance the common shared information between the speakers by accessing to more reachable source domains. And metaphorically is also a rhetorical strategy in literacy. That's the second thought. That's what I understand. And I didn't aim to contribute to theory, but what I tried is trying to make the model to work more like human. This is a big step to reach. Yeah, even I have did a little bit, and I think that's already satisfactory. I'm happy with that. Of course, we have a lot of other issues to solve in order to answer to such questions. Yeah, I believe we don't have a final answer or universal answer. But I think metaphor is intriguing. Itself is intriguing. It can help us to understand natural language more if the models can really be trained with such data sets and theories. Yeah.
You had also talked about lies. Tell us more about the work that you're doing with lies. Are you also trying to understand why we lie?
The original purpose is not trying to understand these theoretical questions, as I said. It is based on my observation of infodemic.
Tell us more. What do you mean by infodemics? What is that about?
Infodemic is a kind of linguistic term, combined with information, the maximum of information, and the suffix of pandemic. So this blended word actually is quite innovative at that time, shows the rapid transmitting mode of lies, misinformation, rumors, all kinds of misleading information online during COVID-19. And COVID-19 itself is a pandemic. So it's like a metaphorical expression of how such information, such lies and misinformation, myths spreading like a pandemic. So it's an epidemic.
So two interesting topics here. One is this new blended word that came about during the COVID pandemic, or was it around before that? Infodemics.
The term infodemic is kind of innovative, yeah. And quite a handful of researchers did intensive work during the epidemic and the post-pandemic. But the phenomenon of infodemic actually exists since the human history. As long as there's a human, there's a lie, and people like to gossip. People tend to spread lies more than spreading positive information. And that's one of the interests of my paper, that paper about infodemic, and what they found, interestingly. And more interesting is, while I'm doing this preliminary research, I found that there's a coordinative effect between emotion and this infodemic, this fake news spreading dissemination. So as my paper suggests, the negative emotions such as fear, anxiety tend to drive people in disseminating this information that even makes the infodemic more severe.
So you had mentioned that lies spread faster than facts. You have also mentioned that it's the negative emotions that seem to drive the spread of this negative information. Why are we talking about negative emotions and why not positive emotions spreading information?
Actually, my study studied all kinds of information, including negative and positive parts, with data-driven and statistical findings. It supports the observation that negative emotions such as fear and anxiety tend to drive people to disseminate, spread such fake news more widely and fast, more often also. And this is supported, also accounted for by later on a theory in psychology, a prospect theory, to trying to use the gain and loss framework to account for such a phenomenon. Because intuitively, think about that. If you see something negative online, and this especially is health-related, high stake, that people might be in the situation of like life loss. Yeah. So in this high stake scenario, people tend to believe that and spread it quickly. And that caused the infodemic. So it is related to people's action, a societal action, encountering risks, gain or loss. So if it's loss, they tend to disseminate it. Yeah, I have a framework theory in my paper.
Are we as humans more worried in a way about what we might lose rather than about what we might gain? So if we're in a situation where we might gain a lot but lose a little bit, we would prefer to lose a little bit rather than the chance of gaining a lot. Is that what the gain and loss theory is?
I think it makes sense. Yes, but I wish I had enough data to support that. It is based on the statistical analysis and all the modeling thing. We found the negative emotions are prominent in driving such epidemics in language patterns. And that I think we need more theory to try to understand that behavior, why people tend to take actions while they are feeling like a risk of loss instead of gains. And people might feel less motivated to share the gains when they feel their gains. But then when it's at risk of loss, they want other people to share the loss, if I'm right. But I'm not an expert in psychology.
Do you think that we want to share our loss, or that we, in a bizarre way, enjoy other people's loss?
Kind of. Do you think so?
Yeah, I do actually believe that we have a nasty streak to us.
Gossiping.
And that, yeah.
Yeah. To share the pains.
Yes.
I didn't mean that people don't share the positive sides, but usually they get paid to do that. Or people work in a department in government.
Yes, you certainly don't hear a lot of positive news when you switch on the news, for example.
Yeah, think about that.
Negative.
The data is based on social media data. People create it in free mode, if I'm right. They are not paid to do this. And that shows the more natural way of societal behavior. That's why I like to study social media data in my research.
And I suppose all of that social media is the corpus that you use in this corpus linguistics, computational linguistic exercises that you carry out.
Yes, quite a big group of us are doing this kind of using social media data as corpus. It's called WAC corpus, WAC in short. Was one category of researchers working in linguistics, in corpus linguistics. And actually, we cannot set apart these areas strictly. There are certain overlapping areas between corpus linguistics and computational linguistics and even AI.
One last question I had for you. In many of your papers, you talk about sentiment analysis. I'll imagine it's related to some of the things that you've already told us about, but what exactly is sentiment analysis and how does it work within the research that you carry out?
Sentiment analysis is closely related to emotion and affective computing, and they are in a hierarchical relation. Sentiment is more focusing on study the polarity of language. Like while you're saying something, you tend to show positive or negative or neutral polarity in your expression. And emotion is related to sentiment, but it has more dimensions of sentimental or emotional aspects of language patterns, more fine-grained categories instead of just negative and positive polarity. It could be like what I studied in my research, multiple categories, emotion, sadness, disgust, so on and so forth. And in theory, it also incorporates multiple aspects of features, including violence and affection, empathy, sympathy. And this all together can contribute to the research of affective computing. So to answer to your question about sentiment analysis, they are working together for us to understand the affection, the sympathy, emotion, and empathy of human being through the modeling of such language patterns.
You have talked about many different areas within linguistics, applied linguistics more generally. I think for any future students of the humanities, you've given them many ideas and many future research projects to get their hands into. Are there any last words that you would like to tell our audience?
Yes. Thank you, Professor Lopez. I wanted to summarize all these research aspects I have been doing. It looks like they are quite diverse. Actually, my research served for one ultimate goal, that is trying to understand language from humanistic perspectives instead of just the superficial representations of language, to mimic the human language behavior. I mean, my research tries to really understand the soul of language, the mechanism of language. And so my research is not based on pieces of separate research. It is systematic. And I have a passion for me to strive hard to work on that way, to find proper solutions and answers to account for so complex issue in language. My teaching also is aligned with my research goal, and this will help also the students to learn these multidisciplinary areas of language-related subjects, including linguistics, corpus linguistics, applied linguistics, language teaching and learning, natural language processing, even computer science, artificial intelligence, generative AI, more easily, more profoundly. I find that all these areas, they help to answer to a same question, that is, what is language, what is humanity?
Thank you very much, Lara. I think for our listeners, if you thought that the humanities were dead, this has probably shown the opposite. Not only that, I think there is a lot of future for the humanities, all of these aspects that you've told us about. So we encourage any young people out there to come and explore all of these topics. So thank you so much, Clara, for joining us today, for sharing all of your work with our listeners. It has been a pleasure to have you on this podcast.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on Exploring the Humanities from the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. For more episodes or information, visit our website or follow us on Spotify. Stay tuned for discussions with leading voices from the Faculty of Humanities and beyond.